welcome to the SaaS Revolution Show. I should say, welcome back to the SaaS Revolution Show. Eric Santos, CEO of Resultados Digitais. Welcome, Eric.
Pleasure to be here, Alex.
And you're, is it sunny Sao Paulo or Florianopolis today?
I'm in Florianopolis right now. It's sunny, a little bit warm today. It was rainy yesterday, but yeah, it's still summer in Brazil, so we get to enjoy a little bit. Not so much outdoors now, but
that's right. That's right. So, yeah. Are you? Is this your apartment window? Or are you in the office? Are you working from home like many others?
I'm working. Yeah, I'm working from home this week. So we had the whole office. We have about 700 people here in Florianopolis. Everybody's working from home. The city is in a virtual lockdown as well. So, but yeah, this is my house, so I'm working from home.
We could perhaps pivot the podcast to like an MTV Cribs type thing, but that's an idea for the next time. I guess just kind of on that, because it is topical, and I guess there's kind of some evergreen kind of lessons from this. So everybody, like this week, because of coronavirus, has moved to working from home. 700 people working in Florianopolis in your company working from home. Is this the first time that you've ever had to do anything like this? And like, what plans, like how have you adapted? Has there been, what are the kind of key lessons, like learnings, challenges there?
Yeah, at this scale, yes, the first time. Well, we have now 5 different offices. So I think over the last few years, we've learned how to do most of the work remotely. Our product team is pretty much on that setup already, even though they come to the office, but they have the virtual rooms, they do everything online. So I think the transition hasn't been that bad for us in terms of tools and practices. But one thing that we're learning the hard way is that most people don't have a pretty good setup at home. So they don't have, the proper chairs and internet connection, that kind of stuff. And of course, the psychological part of the work too, because people are very anxious these days. They don't know what's going to happen, not only with their lives, but with their jobs. And so and especially since we're not around, it's harder to provide them with support as well. So we're being very cautious about that, and taking extra steps in order to have everybody feel safe and warm at this time. But overall, I think we were ready for this transition, so it hasn't been too bad. And it's good. I think that, after this crisis is over, we'll probably have a lot more remote work rather than office work at RD, I guess.
Yeah, certainly will save on the office cost potentially, depending on your lease. And hopefully this is over soonish, but we're certainly preparing for at least sort of a month or two more, if not longer, but hopefully not longer. But we not sort of jumping the gun there. Like we've had you on before, but for those that didn't listen to that podcast yet, can you tell us, who you are, who is Eric Santos, a little bit about yourself, and what is it that the company does, and like how you came about sort of founding this company?
Sure. I'm Eric Santos, CEO and co-founder of RD. We have a marketing automation software called RD Station, and then last year we acquired a CRM company. So now we have another product called RD Station CRM too. So we have both a marketing automation product and a CRM software too. We've been around for 8 years now. This is my second company. My first company was in the mobile space. We used to develop mobile apps and sites for brands back in the 2005, 2006 years. And then the idea for RD actually came because of a pain that I was, feeling in my previous company. We were doing online marketing back then, but it was pretty hard, not only in terms of tools that we had to use different tools that then talk to each other. Then it was hard from an operation perspective, but also in terms of methodology. We didn't know exactly what to do and how to do that. and we thought that online marketing in general was a very big opportunity for SMBs in Brazil, but like nobody was doing anything in that field. So we decided to start a company to do just that. We launched a product in 2012. It's been a crazy journey so far with, as I mentioned, we have now over 700 employees, more than 15,000 customers, now in more than 20 countries. And our main focus is still Brazil, where we have the majority of our customers. But we, a couple of years ago, we started this international expansion plan. And the goal there is to be the leading growth platform for SMBs in emerging markets. So we started with Latin America, and now we're expanding to other emerging markets as well.
Cool. Thanks for the background there. And your venture back, the last round of funding was a Series D. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. We raised our Series D last August. We raised about $50 million.
Yeah.
Led by Riverwood Capital. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have backing by Riverwood, TPG, Red Point Ventures, and a couple of local funds here from Brazil.
So now we've got the Series D. I guess first of all, you're on this path, right? And on this growth path, and you raise the 50 million, you get to Series D. From that point, you know what changes, for the company, if anything.
I think we can divide our story into a couple different phases, but I would say that until 2016, we were very focused on basically just growing the company here in Brazil with the one product that we had. And then at that point, we realized that the opportunity was bigger, and we were mature enough and strong enough to start pursuing new avenues of growth. And two of them that we just started exploring back then was, the first one was the international expansion opportunity. The idea that the same things that we did in Brazil in terms of education, in terms of methodology, partner channel, and software itself would be replicable in other emerging markets. And we saw that most of those markets were still basically untapped. So that was the first idea that we started exploring back then. And then the other one was the idea that we actually create a meaningful connection with their customers, and they have needs in other areas of their growth machines as well. So we think that we can help them with two different things. One is to really create an ecosystem of other integrated apps around our software. So we have now more than 100 other SaaS companies from Brazil integrated with their DStation in all different verticals that try to help our customers with having a better user experience and more consistent customer data. And of course, having additional products to the product line as well. That would be that's something that we started with the CRM acquisition a couple of years ago, and we're thinking about a roadmap for that as well. So we started exploring those ideas in 2016, but actually only last year that we actually had meaningful data and proof points to really step on the accelerator and put some more resource into those initiatives. So that was the main idea for the Series D. We at our what we call the core business unit, which is the marketing product in Brazil, we're basically at break even. We're growing sustainably, still very fast, but sustainably we wouldn't need a new round of funding for that. But for the other opportunities, definitely more investing. So that was the main idea for that round of funding. And yeah, I mean, we had a very aggressive plan for 2020. I think that most of it still applies. We haven't changed anything meaningful yet, but of course we're being cautious about what's going to happen in the next few weeks or months, and trying to track different leading indicators to see there's anything meaningful that we need to change in our approach. But rather than that, the goal is to really become the leading growth platform for SMBs in emerging markets.
So from the Series D enables obviously these strategic ideas you've been thinking about and looking at for a couple of years, prior. And one being the internationalization, for growth and focus on emerging markets, and one being this kind of platform play, to become a platform rather than just a product. And from if we just look at sort of both, to understand and help the listener maybe as to why you would want to do both. So obviously you focus first on Brazil as a market, which is a very large market and have achieved phenomenal growth there. To go into the internationalization phase and not doing what I guess a lot of companies, what we see in Europe may do, or either the US, like in Europe when you scale you go to the US, or Israel when you scale you go straight to the US. But in Brazil, you can actually grow to a pretty good size within Brazil. And then you're looking at emerging markets, not the US first. Maybe can you explain a little bit why there? I mean, you mentioned a little bit earlier about just kind of that untapped potential. Why would you not want to go to the US? Maybe help the listener understand that.
Sure. I think it's a common question that why should you pursue those two initiatives at the same time, since they're, they seem to be in a different direction. And of course, I mean, we think that the addressable market in Brazil is much bigger than what we have now. We think that's probably around 2 million companies that could be our customers, and we have about 15,000 customers. So still scratching the surface there. And then for those customers, the idea of becoming really a platform and having more offers in our solution is, I would say that's probably a no-brainer. But the international part, we think that we need to, it's a big opportunity, and we think that the window of opportunity for that is kind of narrow, because at this point in our industry, I think that most companies are still focused either in the US or in other developed markets. By the way, they are right to do so, because that's where the money is, and where the markets are more mature, and we have more demand. But at the same time, we since we are from Brazil and we live this every day, there are a lot of different things that the American companies simply don't get when they come to a country like Brazil. And for instance, they usually have their contracts in English. They try to charge customers in US dollars. Their customer support team is based in the US or in India, but they only speak English. They don't have connections and networks of partners or resellers on the country. So that's, especially for SMBs, it's a big challenge. Like, and in situations like this, like in the last few weeks, our currency has been deflated a lot. It's fluctuating a lot in the last few weeks, and people get really nervous if they have commitments in currency like US dollars. So those are the kind of things that we need to adapt when we want to serve SMBs in a market like Brazil. And then when we go to Mexico, when we go to Colombia, when we go to Indonesia, it's the same situation here. So I think that not only it is an untapped opportunity, but I think that we actually developed the right muscle and the right solution for a country like this. And if I go to the US or to Europe, maybe I might lose the competitive edge that I have. On the other hand, I think that if we do everything right, we think that we can basically replicate what we built here, so in other emerging markets. So that's the reason that we decided to assume this, what we call the contrarian approach for international expansion, because as you said, the natural path would be to go to the US or to Europe. But in our case, we're more excited about this opportunity of becoming the leader in emerging markets. And I would say that probably another good side effect that we had with this strategy is that the team actually sees this as an opportunity for them to have an international career with NRD. So it's a good way for us to attract and retain talent in the team as well. So it's a good side effect that we didn't see beforehand.
So you've got the strategies which have you've been able to kind of act on like after this Series D. What about the execution sort of part of it? So in terms of again, I mean the Series D was last year, right? Was that right?
Series D, yeah, last year.
So yeah. If we're talking 2020, and again, I don't know how much the strategy has changed. Perhaps not more so like for you with what's happening at the moment. But so you set out your 2020 goal, and you say, again, like we're going to be a platform company, and we've got the international expansion. From the execution side of things, like how do you sort of roll this out? Can you give a kind of like high level view of that? Is it are we on a quarterly basis saying, okay, we're going to focus for the next 90 days on working on the platform and then international expansion? How does it work in tandem? Just some ideas about how you go about executing against the strategies would be cool to know.
Sure. I think it's a great question because it's something that we're learning along the way, and I think we're getting better at now. So I think one of the challenges that we had with our Series C, after our Series C, was to really build a very good and experienced executive team. So now I have my executive team I have a very good balance between people with experience in later stages of a technology company, with people who have scale with us, not necessarily from the early days at RD, but they have experience in other startups and tech here in Brazil. So I think we have this good balance now, and I think we have a good governance system for managing the operation in the core business here. So it took us about a couple of years to get to that level of performance and cohesion in the team there. For the new things and for that part of the business, I mean, it's just regular quarter by quarter basis, getting efficiency, getting scale, the regular reports and incremental improvements there. For the other part, I think one of the learnings that we had was that we actually need to treat them as startups internally. And what I mean by that is that we actually need to basically isolate those teams, have an entrepreneur in front of the initiative there, and basically have a different set of goals and different set of metrics that we keep track of, instead of like revenue and unit economics on the just the regular operation there. We actually try to measure product market fit, try to measure adoption and early retention. We have a different rhythm and cadence. So more specifically about my job, when I have meetings with my execs, it's just regular one-on-ones and check-ins with them, just to see how the operation's going, if there's anything I can help them, that kind of stuff. But when I have meetings with people leading initiatives such as new products or new geographies, they're much more like board meetings, in a sense that in that meeting I'm playing the role of an investor. Like I'm trying to coach them in a way that I would if I were their investor. And then having a different set of agenda and objectives there for those initiatives. And that way, I think we have tried to prevent that little initiative to get in the way of the bigger operation, and vice versa also, because we tend to make it too corporate too soon if we don't watch for that. And we also try to preserve the same skill set and attitude that entrepreneurs have in the early days, that they're not the same types of skills that you need to be successful at a later stage. So what I say a lot internally is that my executives are very good at the state that we are right now with the company. I'm not sure they're going to be great, 5 years from now. And definitely they're not great for the early days. And also the founders that I have in those initiatives, they're not great for the stage that we are right now. So it's good to have that kind of flexibility internally. And it seems to be working now. I think that, we've definitely made a lot of mistakes in that sense the last couple of years, but it seems to be working a lot better now.
So it's a sort of nice segue into, you mentioned there about your executive team and, working or like acting as an investor, with, running like almost like a board meeting for these strategic initiatives in one-to-one. So going into you as the CEO and your, I guess, daily kind of weekly, monthly habits and sort of routine, a number of questions. So how many people report into you would be good to kind of know. And then like, how is your time kind of like, sort of spent during the week? Like, how much time do you spend on strategy? How much time are you spending, in the business, like, working, on day-to-day things, if anything. And so from managing people to thinking about strategy to actually, working on problems within the business, just give us an insight into your role as a CEO of a 700-person company.
Sure. So right now I have 7 people reporting directly to me. And it's very, I think we treat it as a very fluid org design there. So it makes sense now. It might not make sense 3 months from now. So we're always changing that, trying to improve that, but that seems to be working. I think that's probably the best span of control that I can have. Because if I have more than 10 direct reports, I'll never be able to give enough attention to everyone. So having said that, today I usually spend, if I look at a quarter, I usually spend about a fourth of my time with what I call people stuff, like attention to my team, to my broader team, and also doing skip level one-on-ones, that kind of thing. So that goes about, and watching out for the company culture too. So that's part of the people bucket. The other part, the other fourth would be strategy. So defining, aligning, communicating strategy, both to the board, to the broader team, to my exec team, to other parts of the organization. I think that would be the second priority there. The third is execution. So making sure that we hit the numbers, and then like all the management stuff, and keeping track of projects, KPIs, helping people deliver the results. And the other fourth would be kind of miscellaneous, but I would say that probably part of my job, fundraising fits into that. So in times like this, I don't have to do much. I just keep the relationship alive with my investors, potential future investors too, but I don't have to do much. But when we are actively fundraising, then the pie chart is a lot. That part of the pie chart is a lot larger than. And I doing marketing stuff like going to events and doing podcasts like this. It's part of what we call the marketing bucket there. So my time is roughly divided among those 4 things, and I work with my EA to make sure that when we plan the quarter, that at the end of the quarter, the actual agenda is a reflection of that choice of priorities, rather than just to enter into this reactive mode where we're scheduling meetings and not thinking proactively about how you want to spend your time. And then of course, I mean, it's one of the hardest part of the job is that you actually have to learn how to say no very often. and sometimes to people that you actually care a lot about. But it is what it is, and it's I'm trying to not only get better at that, but also educate my team, because they have the same demands now. You know, they have some people who run 200 people organizations below them, so they have to learn how to react the same way. So it's a big challenge, but I think we've reached a point where, at least from my perspective, I feel calm about the things that I'm not doing, which is, for me, it's a good indicator of productivity. That when you're relaxed about all the things that you're saying no to.
Yeah. I'm going to, at the end, I'll ask you how you stay calm. But what I wanted to sort of ask now is, obviously we know that you do your one-to-ones with your, with the 7 direct reports, right? But I follow you on Instagram, and I've seen you do like Q&As, sort of like town halls and so on. So can you give us a bit of a picture about, what does it look like from the role of the CEO for communicating to the 700, employees at RD? So how often are you communicating? What formats are you communicating in? And why is it important?
I have what we call minimum commitments with the team, which is basically with my direct reports, bi-monthly check-ins and monthly one-on-ones. Then I have quarterly skip level one-on-ones with the direct reports of my direct reports. Then I have quarterly meetings with these what we call internally the steering committee, which is a larger group of about 30 people that would discuss strategy there. And then and another quarterly meeting with the leadership group of the team, at about 30 leaders in the company. There are the senior leaders in the company, managers and up. And then I have monthly hangouts with the team, which is a town hall that I just mentioned. I usually do that on Fridays. We talk about anything that happened in the last month. We talk about numbers. At the end of the quarter, we open up everything in terms of performance. So those are the minimum commitments. And then I try to, on top of that, I try to use whatever to have at my disposal, and especially when I think that there's a need for an extra layer of communication or a new message or anything like that. So for instance, this week I recorded a 30-minute video to send to the team about the whole thing that we're going through right now, not only externally, but also what we're doing internally to fight this crisis now. So I could have waited till Friday, but I thought that it'd be a very good opportunity for us to get closer to the team, especially in a moment where we're not working in the office. So I try not to be like too picky about the channels or the format. It changes a lot, but I do have that minimum commitment that, and one way it may seem that it's a lot of work and a burden, but on the other hand, and something that my coach always says to me is that if you have that, if you actually fulfill that commitment with the team, then you're free to do anything else. Like everything else is optional, but you get the operation running, and then people know that if they have something to talk to you, if they have a problem, if they have any issues, they have the specific times and formats to bring that conversation to you. So yeah, I think that's roughly what I use today.
Now, sort of bringing it back to you for the kind of the final sort of parts of the show, right? You're leading. This is the second, startup or second business that you're running. You're running a very large and successful business. For you, first of all, like, how do you learn to lead? Like, what are you doing to learn to lead, to be a better leader? Be interested to kind of know, what are you doing there? You know, is it reading? You know, coach? Do you have coaches? Are you part of other programs? This sort of thing. So, I'd like to learn about that before then we get into. You mentioned about being calm, and you know, how do you stay calm? What are your kind of tips for that? But let's start with about learning to be a leader. What do you do there?
I remember one of the conference that I was at probably 4 or 5 years ago, and somebody was interviewing Keith Rabois, that famous investor, and then his the question was about how to become a CEO, because you know, are you born a CEO, or you know, can you make CEOs? And then his answer was something that stuck with me, is that yeah, you like, nobody's born a CEO, and he definitely has good examples in his portfolio companies. Aaron Levy is one of those good examples. The guy is pretty young, and he's learned how to lead a company not only as big as Box, but also in the enterprise sector. You know, he has to deal with you know, leaders, senior leaders who are probably 20 or 30 years older than him. So his answer was around those lines, that you can learn how to be a good leader, but you actually have to devote time and energy to do that. It doesn't come easy. So my perspective on that is that, okay, I'll do my best to become the best version of me as a leader. If I feel that it's not enough for RD, or if my board feels that it's not enough for RD, happy to talk about it. So I'm not attached to the position or the title, but while I'm still running the company, I need to make sure that I do my best to become the best leader that I can. And then the you know, there's a lot of reading, there's a lot of, you know, things that I watch or listen to. I try to go to executive programs that you know, I did one at Stanford, another one at HBS, one per year, which is good for you to, you know, take a step back in the company and learn different things. And also for the last couple of years, I've been using the help of a coach. It's helping me a lot, because there are many things that, and in my case, he has the experience with, so he's able to guide me through some of the situations that I go through. And in other times, it's just a good, somebody for you to share your ideas or concerns with, and it's a good way to, you know, kind of have the reflection of those thoughts back into you, and then it makes you realize things a little bit better, and think a little more clear. So it's been very helpful to me. And the last thing that I do, especially this last couple of weeks, I've been doing this a lot, is to talk to other entrepreneurs in the same situation. So I'm part of different organizations. One of them is Endeavor, a global organization that helps entrepreneurships and scale-ups. And here, not only globally, but here in Brazil too, we have a lot of other companies that are roughly at the same stage as RD. So, and I have those, you know, I'm friends with the CEOs of those companies. So in situations like this, like, we just call each other and then talk about shit that's going on, like especially those last couple of weeks. Like, it's new for everybody. Like, nobody has gone through this ever. So not even, you know, more experienced leader or your coach. So I think it's a good way for us to learn, and also to keep emotionally calm in the process. So I'm not a calm person. I mean, I get very anxious. I get stressed a lot. But one thing that I'm trying to get better at is that I try to be more deliberate and proactive about my decisions on what to pursue, what to do, and how to allocate my time. And even if it takes time for me to actually plan my week or my month, but then after I make a choice, like I try to be calm about the things that I'm choosing not to do at this time, which is for me the biggest factor of anxiety and stress. The things that I know that I should be doing, but I'm not being able to do for whatever reason. So I think that's what's helping me a lot in terms of managing stress and anxiety. A lot of different things, like, from how to manage the schedule, having dedicated time for my family, having also dedicated time for my hobby. I drive go-karts and cars, so it's another way for me to have an emotional outlet too. So having specific times for those things also help a lot. That's how I'm dealing with the pressure. It's not easy, but it's fun if you think of it as a learning experience as well.
Do you switch off from work on the weekends and just dedicate Saturday, Sunday to family, friends, and yourself, or do you find that that's not possible, and you still have to kind of allocate some part, towards work? How do you work on the weekends?
I try not to work on weekends. One thing that I do every weekend is to reserve a couple of hours just to plan the week, because I feel that when I spend that time to plan the week, I start on Monday in a much better shape. So I think it's worth doing that. Doesn't necessarily need to be at a specific time, so it can be on Saturday morning, Sunday night. It depends a lot on what I have planned for the weekend. But then, of course, like, there are times where we actually need to work. So I try not to be too radical on any extreme here. So, for instance, like, this couple weeks have been very challenging for us, and it's not that I can just go to the beach and stay there, hang out there, and pretend that nothing's happening in the world. So it wouldn't be right anyway. But at the same time, I don't believe that it's a sustainable rhythm if you work every weekend and you don't have time to switch off. So even when I have those 2 hours, those are the only 2 hours that I'm actually working on the weekend. The other times I'm not, I try not to think about work and try to disconnect from work as well. It's hard, but this is what I'm trying to do, especially in the last few years.
Awesome. Well, I know we've come to the end of the show there, but a lot of learnings, and from I guess the Series D, but also I think from a lot of people that certainly aren't at the Series D sort of level and beyond, to understand how to kind of run a business and look at strategy and execution. So really appreciate you sharing that with our audience today, Eric. Thanks so much.
My pleasure, Alex. You know that I'm a big fan of your work, and do anything to help your community too.